My older sister is my mother. Her second cousin is my father.
Beep boop, son. Beep boop.
What dirty little secret do you know about someone, but they don't know you know?
While on a family trip to Thailand, my mom spent a few days in the hospital. My dad told us that she was sick, but I know she really just got a boob job.
Why bother hiding that? Isn't it obvious to someone who sees you every day?
Some of the best boob jobs aren't noticeable unless you see them naked before and after. If she was happy with her boob size but not perkiness, sag etc., she could have gotten a boob job that looks perfect naked but the same as it looked with a good push-up bra when dressed.
I know of a case of a failed attempt at an incestuous relationship. A man had sex with who both he and she thought was his daughter. She was in her early 20s and he was around 40 or so. He saw her very rarely and the mum wanted nothing to do with him. Didn't want child support, nearly no contact. After she turned 18 she looked him up, and they had a creepy bond. Neither really knew each other but it was dad and daughter so they tried to make it work. A few years later they ended up getting shit-faced drunk and having a go at each other. Apparently also happened a few more times sober. They ended up both deciding it was too weird and I don't think they speak now but I haven't heard from either in several years. Turned out when the girl was around 12 the mum made him take a paternity test to settle an argument. It came back he wasn't the father, but mum lied and said the test was positive. She never told the daughter and the man believed he was. So while they did have a creepy father-daughter sexual relationship and will always have that in their memory, they weren't actually related. The mother confided in me about the paternity issue. The father had confided in me about the incest relationship he had with his estranged daughter. TLDR, I know a girl who did not have sex with her father.
My brother started the fire in our backyard that destroyed half the property and my dad's whole shed full of tools. The fire was centered around the very spot my brother had been sneaking out back at night to smoke, and he would always put the cigs out on the dry pile of logs stacked right next to him. I saw him out there every night cause my window pointed to the backyard, and I was planning to use the information for leverage to get him to take me to GameStop on Halo 2 launch night. But after the fire I kept my mouth shut. I could tell he felt guilty enough about it since he spent the whole week after helping my dad clean up the damage and repair what they could. I still got Halo 2 at midnight, so it had a happy ending.
An individual I know is very anti-porn. Speaks out against it on Facebook, stops talking to people if she finds out they watch it, the whole works. Doesn't stop her from watching it with her back conveniently turned to the wall. She's also not as discreet as she thinks.
My older sister is my mother. A second cousin is my father. She gave me to her parents, who legitimately adopted me, and raised me. By the way, they're awesome parents, but no one felt the need to tell me who my biological parents are. I need to edit, a second cousin of hers, not a second cousin of mine, is my father.
I'm confused about the shape of this family tree you are describing.
Pretzel.
My aunt had a baby boy when she was a teen. To this day, my grandparents are not aware of their first grandson's existence and still believe I am the first grandchild. The only other person she told was her sister, my mom. I only know because my mom told me.
Where's the child now?
My mom told me he's in the Philippines. I think if I asked my mom exactly where he is, she would probably tell me. It would be cool to meet my cousin. I just honestly don't know if he even knows about our family.
My neighbor is having an affair. She and her husband leave for work every morning and she comes back with another dude around lunchtime about twice a week. I don't think she knows I work from home and realizes how big their picture windows really are. Update plus Ninja Grammar Edit, rip my inbox and all that. This blew up way past anything I imagined and I've gotten hundreds of responses. The majority of you are suggesting I tell the husband in some anonymous way, although there is a significant minority with good reasons to mind my own business. I do not know them at all. They don't have kids, and for all I know the guy has a cuckold fetish and he knows what's happening. I'm interested in the situation because of how divisive it is and as a morality, ethics problem to consider.
My Bill has a stash of used dirty panties. That in itself wouldn't be that weird to me, but he keeps them all in a Ziploc bag. Locked in his safe. With nothing else. In the safe, just a bag of dirty panties. In a gun safe. I know this because other Bill had to go through his room recently to get all of his guns out of the house. That is a whole other thing with a whole other story, and he found the panty stash. Edit, trust me everyone, he's not a serial killer. He's not smart enough to have gotten away with it for this long. We're talking about the same guy that drove home drunk, parked on the front lawn, and left his truck running all night after he went inside. It was still running when I got up for work the next morning. We used to live together.
Had a friend middle school who legitimately had a crush on SpongeBob SquarePants. She let me use her computer a couple of times and I snooped through her shit and found her stash of self-insert SpongeBob fanfiction. Found a couple of NSFW drawings as well. I couldn't really judge, I've had my fair share of animated crushes, but it was still bizarre experience.
When I was in 1st grade, my friend's brother in 4th grade wanted us to tie him up and embarrass him. We thought it was funny and played along. It was nothing sexual for us, but I remember his boner and wondering how it just stood up like that. But other than that, I didn't think much of that incident. Sometime during HS, I remembered all of a sudden and had a holy shit moment. Now we're older and we're friends. He probably thinks that I completely forgot about that incident, or maybe he forgot himself because there's no way he could act so naturally towards me otherwise. If I tell him now, he would just die of embarrassment.
If I tell him now, he would just die of embarrassment. Judging by your story, that sounds like something he might be into.
My dad took my mum to an intimate French restaurant one year about an hour from home on a Tuesday night since it was their anniversary. In walks a married co-worker with the co-worker's, not my dad's, secretary. The guy didn't see my dad, but my dad was pissed. My dad would use this as a lesson to us kids. He'd tell us that you never know who sees you doing something wrong, so be honest, ethical and decent.
My 16-yo goody two-shoes sister got caught having sex in the car, twice. At midnight I got a call from a cop asking if I was her mother. Sensing something was up, I said yes. He loudly told me, "We found your daughter having sex with a boy in a car." Shocked, irritated, but laughing at her misfortune, I drove 20 minutes to pick her ass up. I pulled up to the parking lot of an apartment complex and saw 3 police cars, lights still on. Not a lot goes on in our neighborhood on a Saturday night. Her boyfriend sat on the curb talking to one of 3 cops, but still waved when he saw me pull up. Cute. A very serious cop with eyebrow way too plucked brought my crying sister to the car. It was clear I wasn't our mom, since I'm just a few years older, but my cunning small talk convinced him to let me take her home instead of calling our mom again. On the way back she was all too grateful for protecting her from my mother's unforgiving wrath. She doesn't know 6 months later and confessed that they'd been caught elsewhere last weekend. In conclusion, I'm the slickest, coolest sister you could have, and she is forever my bitch.
A colleague of mine is a convicted rapist. It is an office setting, so there are lots of women around who might feel uncomfortable around him. HR knew about the rap either in his employment application or in the background check, but decided not to tell the hiring manager and blessed the hiring. A couple of folks did a search online later only to discover there was a shit ton of coverage in the local news about the events that led to drugging and raping a young woman.
I would want to know this about a coworker. I really would, for safety's sake. At a minimum, if you ever see him paying a little extra attention to a coworker, please warn them even if you don't tell them why. And don't let them walk to their car alone.
It's a little tricky. Apparently he has a right to work in a non-hostile environment, and has some protection. The worst part for me is he is a total dick to people, but his boss looks the other way. I really want to call it to everyone's attention, but ultimately it might jeopardize my standing in the org. Sucks.
I know that one of my friends is cheating on her husbands with at least 5 other guys. One of them is her husband's best friend. She does it for attention, and to see if she is still attractive. She's 23.
Jesus. That's desperation.
I have a very similar story. I know of a woman who was married, had sex with at least 1 other person, got divorced, had sex with me, 2 of my buddies and a coworker of mine. Then was hanging out with 2 other people who I can only surmise she had sex with. I only have rumors though. Then she got married to a different coworker of hers. Then not too very long ago, I literally witnessed her have sex with a 3rd coworker of mine while at a party. There's a whole lot of Eskimo bros here. Oh yeah, she's pregnant now.
Around 2000-2001, my roommate at the time used to take pictures of him and his girlfriend fucking and store them in his desk. This was way before everyone had phones or digital cameras. She's a very proper girl, and has always dressed conservatively, and gave off a vibe of being sort of quiet and boring. They have been married for about 12 years now with 2 kids, and is very much the supermum who's on the PTA, kids soccer league board of directors, teaches Sunday school, etc. The pictures were of her wearing a ball gag and him fucking her in the ass, while others of her with a huge black dildo in her mouth and a butt plug in. Lots of facials too. My friend would be shocked if he knew I saw these, and his wife would probably have a heart attack.
Not really a dirty secret, but I walked into a person's house and heard them and their spouse getting it on in their bedroom across the house really loudly. I quietly backed out and closed the door and left. This is someone who'd asked me to do some work for them, and I've been in their house many times and they'd told me to come on in and work on it, and I thought they knew I was going to be there soon. I knocked and called out their name, but their lovemaking was louder than my announcement. I think I'll bring it up at their funeral because they're a bit older than me and their kids would get a good laugh about it.
Married people having sex in their own house? Is there no end to the depravity?
A colleague of mine is an attractive young woman in her mid-20s and wants everyone to think that she's just a strong independent career woman. But I know she plays Magic, the Gathering online during her lunch breaks. I fucking know your secret. I know that my old school teacher used to take bribes from parents to raise their children's grades.
There. Clearly your parents paid a lot.
My dad has had multiple affairs over the past 10 years, and I'm the only one in our family who knows. He does a lot of international business for work, and a few years ago I became suspicious of how he spends his time, so I got access to his email and phone records and found out about 3 long-term mistresses spanning a few years' time period, all outside the US. I wanted to tell my mum, but I knew it would absolutely crush her, and despite his infidelity, he's always been a good provider, father for us, and this information would have completely torn the family apart and left my mum in ruins. I never confronted him about it, and from what I can gather he had a change of heart and completely stopped about 2 years ago, but to this day I still sometimes wonder whether or not I did the right thing by not saying anything.
My old boss had 8 abortions, all fathered by her long-term boyfriend who has been wanting kids for years but believes he is infertile.
That's sick. Truly sick. She never told him?
No, I know she didn't, cause he was in tears one night telling me how he just wants to be a dad.